just think that she was blinded by love, and she would have preferred if he just, stayed with her and the baby. But if he wasn't going to, then she was going to follow him too, because she believed in him. I think she believed in him more than she believed in the God he believed in.
Sera-Lys, tell me about yourself.
I am, I guess you could say, biracial or multiracial. My mom is German Canadian, so our family has been in Canada for multiple generations, but maintained a German heritage, and also very Canadian. And then my dad is Nakota, which is one of the Plains tribes in the U.S. It's referred to as Assiniboine, but it's the same people, same language, just different deposits of communities and little differences in the languages, but it's still the same people. So Assiniboine or Nakota. Grew up in a city called Regina, Saskatchewan, which is pretty much the middle of nowhere. Um, Nothing against it, but there wasn't a lot of opportunities there. So I left when I was 18 to go to New York. I went to musical theater college there. Since then, I've kind of just been following my acting career. I did some modeling when I was in New York as well, but it wasn't really fulfilling for me because they want you to like change things about yourself that you can't change, and you start to feel that like bad about yourself, and if you're not exactly what they want, if you're like waist is an inch too big or you're an inch too short, or so I wanted to focus on acting, and at that time there was a lot of filming happening in Vancouver and barely any happening in New York. So I moved to Vancouver, and then after that I moved to England. I lived in London, but I went to school in Essex, and I got my master's there in acting. And then I moved to LA for a year, and that was in the recession, so that wasn't a fun time to be there really. But at least I got, my LA experience and got to learn the industry over there and what it's like to live in that city. And then I decided to go back to Canada. I moved to Toronto, and that's when my Canadian TV career started taking off, and also theater as well. And then I was aching to move back to New York for a while, so I'm happy that, that's happened now too.
Yeah, and you're in Portland right now, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you live in New York City. That's
Mhm.
your permanent residence right now?
Yeah, and I also live in Toronto sometimes.
Yes. You go where the roles are, right?
Yeah, exactly. I took a big break from fully staged theater productions because I was doing a lot of them in Canada, and I was constantly on the road, and I didn't really maintain my places very much, or I would rent them out, and I wanted a change, and I knew that if I was going to make a change, I would have to stop taking those jobs. And then the audition for this play came along, and I read this script, and it was an earlier draft because it's a brand new play, and I was incredibly moved by it emotionally, and I was like, oh darn, like if I get this, I'm gonna have to do it because it's just such an important story.
Can you say a little bit about what?
It's called Crossing Minishoshi, which is the Dakota or Siouan word for the Missouri River. Um, it means swirling water, or to my people, it means muddy water. So that's the thing about oral languages. You don't really know exactly which one they meant, so it goes back and forth between the Lewis and Clark Cora discovery, Sacagawea tale and historical event, and the Standing Rock protest that happened in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
in North Dakota. So it ties those together thematically, and it's very powerful.
I read in one of your interviews, you said acting is following your buffalo.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit?
I've moved around a lot. I've never really felt like one specific location is my home per se. And that also is cultural because I come from a nomadic people who moved and migrated around and followed the buffalo because that was their sustenance. And I couldn't really figure out why. I was like, why do I like to move around so much? I just can't seem to stay anywhere. I get fed up and I want to leave and I want to move on and do something new. And and the one thing that stays the same is my acting, wanting to pursue that, wanting to follow that and see where it leads. And it's gotten me out of some, like, when you're a young person, you might make some poor choices and or like choose to hang out with some people that aren't really good for you. Even if things got pretty grim, if I was able to refocus on my acting, then that would always lead me out of whatever like negativity was happening in my life. And so I started to trust that. Sometimes people, in society, they can like give you a bit of flack. They're like, why do you move around so much? You're going to have to put some roots down eventually, blah, blah, And I talked to a counselor once and I was like, yeah, people keep telling me that I should like stay somewhere, but I just can't figure out where I want to stay yet. And she's like, you don't have to like acting is your buffalo, you know, just like it was for your people. You follow it, you gain sustenance from it. It fulfills you. And it doesn't have to be a location that fulfills you. So that made me feel a lot better about the way I chose to live my life.
I read about the Jay Treaty, which I think
Uh-huh.
you're able to travel freely between
Mm-hmm.
Canada and the US.
Yeah.
Because of that, correct? You have to be 50% or more
Right.
Indigenous to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also why I choose to be like, you know what, I don't have to commit to a location because it's like I don't have to legally or politically or through immigration. Like as long as it's somewhere in what is now the US and Canada, like I'm allowed to be there. I would say when I first got into acting, I wasn't like, oh, this is fulfilling me in a cultural way, I was just like, I like acting, it's fun. But then as you grow and move and change, you start to like kind of realize who you are and your identity and how far back that goes. Cultural identity that can maybe wasn't even really taught to me directly when I was young, very much. But then as I became more recognizable in Canada as a First Nations actress, I started to automatically be in a role model position. I don't know. It just started to make more sense. Everything felt like it was falling into place and it meant something. And whenever I was telling stories, like in school when I had to do my instead of a dissertation, we did a final performance that we wrote, and that had to do with like my cultural identity, and that seemed compelling to people. They were intrigued by it, interested in it. It's hard because it's a fickle career. It's really the industry is separate from the art, right? And but at the same time, you have to do both if you want to pursue a career. Role model stuff, it gives it a whole nother depth, as opposed to just doing, I want to do me, be me, I want to be happy, I want to get money, I want to get fame, I want people to love me, like me, and that never really sat well with me about what the industry can be. But what does sit well with me is being put in a position uh, to reach people and tell stories, gain knowledge and share that knowledge with people. That's power to me. That's something that if I can change someone's mind or teach them about something or, give them something to look forward to, then I find that beautiful and powerful and gives me a different meaning behind the work I do.
Let's segue into your casting story. I know that you got wind of this big wide net that was being cast by Outlander. So did somebody from Suzanne Smith's team actually come over to Toronto? And is that where you did a tape, or you did an in-person audition, or did you send a tape in? How'd that work for you?
I actually did an in-person audition. They hired a Canadian casting director who was going to be in charge of the First Nations casting. She sent out even the big casting for the extras casting that went out across Canada, and that's how I knew about the upcoming job. I asked my agent, like, is there anything? And he doesn't usually answer me until there is something. So I waited patiently, and then I had an audition call. And the first one I auditioned for was Johiehon, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go in for the audition because I was recording an audiobook or 2 audiobooks. And so I couldn't go in the first time they wanted me. And then I was going to be going back to New York. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have time. So I got one of my friends who's Mohawk. His name is Brandon Oakes. I got him to help me tape it just in case I had to tape it. And then I was able to watch it. And I was happy with my tape, but I wasn't like over the moon about it because I noticed my eyes kind of glazed over when I was doing the Mohawk because I had just been learning the Mohawk for that audition, even though they said, if you don't speak Mohawk, don't worry about it. Like, if you do speak a native dialect, say, like, speak in that, or, or just don't worry about it. Just speak in English. But I've even done, like, auditions before where you speak in English as, a period drama character that wouldn't speak English, and it doesn't jive right. I have a feeling that if a producer, like if I was a producer and I was watching it, I would have a hard time imagining that person in the role if they were speaking English because I would think of them as modern. And I saw it as an opportunity to learn some Mohawk, and really try. So I did like pull out all the stops. The French was not as difficult because I contacted one of my friends who's fluent, like her first language is French, translate and said, yeah, that's right, or that's not right, or you should say this instead. And then it was pretty easy.
Which scene did you read for your tape?
I only read the first scene, the one where I come out with the baby. And it was slightly different. And I speak French to Roger, and then Johiehon comes in. And so then I switch languages in the audition from French to Mohawk.
Eha Upunza, parlez-vous français?
Oui.
Pour la douleur, vous mâchez.
Il y a des pères.
Elle a les yeux de son père.
Johiehon. Y'a le Goliwax.
Ayun legi, yatte holungwe datalo.
Tigulungwe. Y'a des hungry dio. Lumonanino, nala wajile. Tonungwa, ayong gongsa. Ayalong no.
I've mentioned her before, Devery Jacobs. She's a Mohawk actress, and she's playing Sam in American Gods this season. And she was also auditioning for Johiehon, and so she was getting the translation from her elder, and she sent it to me so I could learn too. So we try to help each other out, Not everyone, but most of us try to be pretty supportive.
And you got the role. Any hard feelings there?
I doubt it. Debbie is so busy. She's always getting work. Yeah, if anything, like she's definitely booked more roles that we've both gone for, than I have. So I'm sure she's fine.
I can't imagine anyone else in that role. You killed it.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I actually, when I was doing my research, I was like, wait a second. She was in one episode? Can that be right? Because you made such a huge impression. What information did you have about the character when you auditioned?
Not much, because they were keeping it under wraps. So it just said that she was a Mohawk healer, and that she was in love with someone that she couldn't be with, who was the father of her child.
So were you holding a baby doll in your audition?
You don't do that. It's interesting. Like it's such a weird, like it's not even close to what it's going to be. You're in a room and you're wearing normal clothes, or, I wore a dress or something that was very like, it wasn't going to stand out as being modern, but it wasn't, period. And, there's like the people behind the table, and so everything's all in your imagination, and then you have the reader, who was a woman, and she was great. She was awesome.
And she was Roger and
Johiehon. Yeah.
Johiehon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Johiehon. And so what I do is, if that's the camera where I'm looking at you right now, I put the baby just under the camera. So if I was looking at the baby and like having a reaction to the baby, you could still see what I was doing, but it wasn't like I was staring right at you. And then the reader's right there. And then when I saw someone else come in, I think I saw them come in over here, and that was just nobody. I was just like pretending Johiehon was there.
I read that you basically did crying for 2 days. Well, first of all, did you have any scenes? Are there any scenes that were deleted? Did you have any scenes with Jan Tuel?
No, it was frustrating actually, because originally we did have a scene, and then they changed it, and then we kept getting rewrites. The guys, Richard and Jan, had to reshoot some of their scenes in the hut because they changed it, and they had already shot it, and they were like, okay, we're going back. So there's that, and I guess just for time of the script. But
so we saw the love interest of Richard and Jan versus
yeah, like they got to talk about
Johiehon and Jan.
It was supposed to be that when they were digging to get out of the hut, that they actually did get out, and then they were running away, and then he saw me and the baby in the garden picking herbs, and then he like couldn't help himself but to go and see us, and then we had like a moment of like love.
Even though we saw less of you, I think the way they did it makes more sense.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I definitely missed that scene because it would have, but then at least I knew from reading that like that informed my character and Jan. It was too bad we didn't get any actual scenes together, or like 2 episodes. I think it meant a lot more that people were staying true to their heart, no matter what that meant to them, like, or true to what they believed in, to their beliefs. Let's say that. So if Johiehon believed in love more than she believed in what her people would have told her to stay and like raise the child, or and then Jan, or his character, he believed in his vows more, and like his faith, So, and then Roger just couldn't believe in himself to be a person who didn't care, so he had to go running back and put him out of his misery.
I don't know if you guys have any chemistry together. I only saw him burning and you crying.
Well, I was acting off screen for him quite a bit, to like, because we try to give each other something to work with off camera.
Oh, I see. So he'd be doing his screaming scene and you'd be
off camera. like looking at him crying.
Yeah. So you were having to cry off camera and on camera.
Yeah.
That is the most gorgeous baby.
Oh, so cute.
It was 2 babies, right?
2 babies, yeah.
So cute. Beautiful. And you're the baby whisperer.
Aw.
I mean, she was just like, yeah, I'll go anywhere with you. You're my mom.
It was pretty great, actually. I was nervous. I've worked with babies before, but I think I did bond with these babies a little more than usual. The mom was always busy with one of them, and she had nannies with her as well. And then if the baby was in a good mood and hanging out with me, we didn't want to like put her back to her mom because then she'll cry when you get her back again, maybe, you know? So we just kept her with me the whole time.
I think you need to give baby whispering lessons to Sam.
Oh yeah? Why does he have issues?
Well, the question, everyone wants to see Jamie with his grandbabies, but apparently whenever they hand him a baby, it cries.
Oh no.
Yeah, so you need to give him your secret.
Yeah. Well, we kind of just keep her engaged, like, look at her and talk to her and stuff. And then I brought her over to the horses. Sometimes that would calm her down if she was getting upset. And she liked to grab my earring too.
Of course.
That was actually a little hard because we're like, okay, going now,
So how many takes for that stuff with the baby? Because I did think the scenes afterward with Braden, which he did an amazing job as well. That's when I was like, that baby's looking at his face and bawling and,
Yeah. Well, actually the baby was crying first and it made Braden cry. So she was the acting leader in that.
All right. Well, I don't think she got enough credit then because
yeah, she's doing great. And so yeah, Sadie and Neve started teething after the first day of filming. But
so you got a slobbering baby with a rash.
Or I don't know. I barely saw her, but she wasn't that first day. And then Sadie is more fussy, so she would cry easier.
So they milked it. Poor Sadie. So is Sadie just like a Scottish baby from around?
Yeah. So they had originally looked for a Mohawk baby or like an indigenous baby with blue eyes. And they found one, but then that baby got ill before the trip, and so they didn't bring the baby. The mom was one of the supporting artists, and she still came, but so I guess like her family was looking after the baby then back home. So they did like a last minute casting to find 10-month-old twin girls with blue eyes, and they live in Edinburgh.
Oh, so gorgeous.
Uh-huh.
For a moment, I was distracted by that baby.
Yeah, totally. I know they always say never to work with animals or babies, children. They upstage you. But yeah, so their dad loves Outlander, and the mom loves it too, but not as much as the dad apparently. So she knew from a woman at work told her, oh, you gotta submit your girls. And then when she found out it was for Outlander, she's like, oh, he'll definitely say yes then, So he was like, they have to do it. It's Outlander.
During that really emotional sequence, did you approach it as a method actor? Were you thinking of things that made you sad, or was it combination? Or
it's a combination. I mean, method acting, Strasberg method isn't just living the character. It's also incorporating emotional memory. And that I do have quite a bit of training in that, but I've trained in a lot of different ways, and just from experience, things work and then they don't work. Like you can cry about it maybe a few times and then it stops making you cry. So you have to think of something else. You can try and be as present as you can in the moment. So, but you can't waste it all in the wide shot, you gotta so you got to hold on till you have your close up, and then usually they give you a couple shots at that. But if they get it, they get it, So It's very calculated, and you don't really know what's going to make you cry in that moment, but having the fire and yawn and the baby and all of that stuff was it was very, you didn't have to do a lot of work because it all looked so real. And if you just put yourself in the character's shoes, then and allowed to happen what was happening, I was really happy I was able to deliver.
And what do you think? Can I just say Braden?
Yeah.
And Richard's characters, when your character walks into the fire, so it impressed upon everyone who was watching, but those two characters in particular, what do you think it left them with?
I think that Roger saw I think they both saw what real love really is, that sacrifice, that someone would be willing to do anything to be with someone, and couldn't see their life going on without that person. Johiehon, he was in love with Johiehon, so for him it's heartbreaking because I think he realized that she would never have felt that way for him. But he loved her in his own right. So, but he chose to stay. The whole sequence really was showing Roger's character, that he can really step up when he has to, and then to see someone else's sacrifice that's even more intense than his own. I don't know. I guess he would be pretty conflicted, right? It would have reassured him that his following his heart was probably the best option.
Yeah, or not.
I don't know. I guess it depends if he would have thought that she was crazy, or if he would have been like, holy, she loves that person.
Yeah, I thought it put it in perspective for him.
I think that's a big part of it. And yeah, I would be conflicted if I was Roger, because it's like you just spent all this time trying to talk this guy into escaping, and then he was so stubborn that he wouldn't, and then he left this person that loved him so much.
He was kind of a selfish when you think about it.
I guess so. Is it love or is it faith? Those are both huge propellants in people's lives, and if he really believed in immortal souls and heaven and all this, then.
And he felt he was doing their baby a service. Do you think that your character got that and respected and admired him, or was she just distraught? Or
I just think that she was blinded by love, and she would have preferred if he just, stayed with her. and the baby. But if he wasn't going to, then she was going to follow him too, because she believed in him. I think she believed in him more than she believed in the God he believed in.
And you've said that no Mohawk woman would ever leave her baby and do that.
I mean, I think that she wouldn't. But you never know. Love is love. It makes you do crazy things. You know?
Well, I actually reached out to Diana and asked her about that. And I said, I told her you said no Mohawk mother would actually leave her baby and walk into a fire, which is basically committing suicide.
Yeah.
Was this something that she found in her research and just did for dramatic effect, or did she find otherwise? And she said, well, duh, with a grin, Mark. I don't reckon any mother would normally do that, regardless of culture, but people do things they normally wouldn't, or even that their culture teaches them is wrong under extreme circumstances. I'm sure that Father Alexandre's lover didn't regard what she was doing as suicide. She meant to go with him.
It's one of those things that when you, like when I spoke to the Mohawk elder lady, she was like, oh, I wish she wouldn't do that. Like a Mohawk woman wouldn't do that. And yeah, and I agree. Like, but there's exceptions to every rule. Mohawk women specifically, because it's a matriarchal society, so they are the strong ones. They're the ones that stay. They're the ones that make the decisions. They're the ones that keep everyone in line. So, that was something that was a little bit missing from the Outlander depictions.
They had Carmen's character was the warrior leader. And maybe you're saying she wouldn't normally be that. She would be more the chief guy or something.
You can have that. You can have a warrior woman too. But there's basically there would have been women, like even if the head chief was male, like the women were the elder women would have been making all of the decisions and telling the warriors and the chief what they're going to do about these things. There's not room for all of that in every single story or depiction, but I just know because like my culture isn't necessarily a matriarchal culture as far as I know. But Mohawk people are.
It's interesting that the production didn't do that because they tend toward, in my opinion, go towards such a feminist when it comes to Claire.
Yeah. I mean, there's only room for so much. Like they could have gone in that direction or not. They did do a lot of research into different things about the culture, the way that people relate to each other. And that was written into the the interactions with Johiehon and Roger. It's supposed to be, it's a fantasy, and it's based in reality, but it's a story, and so it's not supposed to be like a National Geographic documentary about Mohawk lives and culture. So I think that there was a lot of diligence done, but at the end of the day, it has to serve the story, and that's why we're all here. Is like the Outlander books turned into a TV show. I was happy with the way things were handled, and I thought it was quite respectful. I had trouble as myself being like, how do I play a Mohawk woman who does this? So and what I found was just to be like, she's in love. Like people do crazy things when they're in love, and if it's real love,
In your scene where you're watching Father Alexandre in that horrible torture position where he's getting his feet like heated up, somebody said, why didn't his robe catch on fire? But it's supposed to be underneath his feet, right? Yeah. So it's just burning his nerves off.
Can you imagine? It was probably melting his shoes to the bottom of his feet.
Ugh.
Melting it from the bottom.
He wasn't actually up there, right? He wasn't.
He was up there, but they didn't do the high flames when he was up there. So we had several steps, and that's why it took so long to film, because we had him up there with mostly just smoke and like some flame bars near him, but not coming through. Then we had his stunt double doing like medium flames and more smoke, and then we had to do his stunt double in a flame retardant suit, so that they could turn it up higher. Then they had to have my stunt double in a flame retardant suit so she could do the walk on. And then they did just dummies at the end for the.
You know, they mentioned the stunt double, your stunt double, in the after little, inside Outlander thing.
Yeah.
But I had no idea there was a dude.
Oh yeah, there was a stunt double dude too.
Who was just in there waiting for her to climb up there? That was a guy, a real person? I thought it was a dummy.
No, it was real. They did an amazing job, and I don't know if you got the story about how she kind of stumbled on her way up. So she in this, because you can only afford to do it like once really with the two of them, but I think they did his stuff they did twice, so he did like the high burn twice, and anyway, so she had to practice like stepping onto the pyre and then walk backwards because she couldn't really see, and she was breathing through a little straw that went through the suit, and so when she went and cameras were rolling, she kind of like her foot's like it's in the final edit, like you can see she kind of stumbles, like her foot falls. So then she had to figure out a way to get up there and still do the hug the right way, so it matched like everything that we had planned and then and shot already. And so she face planted into the burning other stunt double. So the straw she was breathing through melted and like burned her lips.
Jan Tool, or they just like spraying water on him and he's like, that looked like pretty exhausting work too.
Yeah, he was just screaming away up there for a couple hours.
Oh,
yeah.
I'd have a headache after that for sure.
I bet. Yeah, I had a headache after that. It was like, but it's the best kind of headache because you're like, yeah, that was awesome. My arms ached from holding a baby for so long, and I was like, yes, this is the best ache ever.
When you were looking at him, you were mouthing some stuff. And, did they have audio for that part? Did they always plan to do the adagio for strings over it? Or were you actually saying something that was supposed to be in the shot?
I can't remember if it was in the final edit or not because of the script that we had, but originally it was supposed to be like I said, mon amour, and went up in, so I was like, okay, well I can keep that, basically you kind of just do what you think you would do, like bring as much like depth and reality to it as possible, and then if the director hates it, they're like, stop it or change it, or And I didn't really know what they were going to do, but I knew the way it was written, like that what we shot was just a whole bunch of slow motion sequences. And I was like, oh, this is going to be like Last of the Mohicans. This is going to be awesome. It helped me with the acting a lot. So I was saying all sorts of things in French, mostly in French. And then at the end, I said something in Mohawk to the baby. I just told her that I loved her. Merzy, our director, who's awesome, she's like one of my favorite directors. She had the idea for the adagio for strings, and she played it for us on set when we were already like filming. She's like, oh, isn't that gonna be so great? And you could kind of like see how it was all gonna go now, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be good. I was like really like on edge like about it coming out. And if they were going to let her keep that music or whatever, because I knew that was her idea, but I didn't know because, producers are the ones that really wear the pants on television. So, yeah, but they did.
Did you have any FaceTime with Katrina and Sam? Did you even meet them? Oh no!
I know, isn't that sad? You met them and I haven't. I kind of hope like maybe I'll get to meet Katrina and Sam eventually, but I'm a little jealousies of the people that got to stay alive for episode 413.
You had worked with Carmen before on your very first.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a TV?
Yeah, it was a TV miniseries.
You played her daughter. And also Greg. I saw a clip of you're pregnant, you're like doing drugs, and he's maybe your husband.
Yeah.
And then you give up your baby in that one too.
I know. I'm constantly getting burned to death and giving up babies.
And I watched that English men's.
Boy, oh, you saw that? Okay.
It was horrible. I was in tears.
Yeah. I was speaking Nakota in that because I was supposed to be Nakota, and that's actually the first time I learned Nakota. And then mashbashba'a means it's burning.
Yeah. I'm burning.
Mm-hmm.
And then he shoots you. So it's really Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah, totally. It's based on a real massacre. It's called the Cypress Hills Massacre. And it really was of Nakota people. They killed this like tribe, blaming them for stealing some horses that they didn't steal. And they raped several Native girls. So that's my character was representing one of the several girls that really happened to, but you kind of streamline it.
Do you like these intense drama roles? Is that your favorite thing to do? Because I mean, I watched Robbery, Outlander, The Wolf, The Wolf of
Wabanwick Woods. Well, I do like it. Once you've kind of proven you can do something, it starts to become your thing because people are like, oh, we need like some really intense acting.
We need fire and in love and
babies, and a lot of Native characters, especially Native female characters, are tragic. But I even for a while there, I was like, can I even do comedy? Because no one seems to ever hire me for it. But I did start getting some comedy work. But I made a short film called Farm Alarm. I don't know if you saw that one. Because I wanted to play a character that was funny, that was modern, that spoke like perfect English, that had a job and wasn't just like a drug addict. Yeah, so that was basically the goal behind creating that short film, was to say like, hey, look, I don't only have to play that. And I wanted to play a little older because I usually play people who are younger. Like I play like wayward young people, so I wanted to be like, hey, like I'm actually a grown-up.
So it's like a double-edged sword because it helps you get work, but then you feel typecast a little bit.
Right. I mean, I still love doing period dramas. I've done a few of them, and some of my other Native actors are like, that's not who I am. I don't want to be seen as that only, and blah blah. And it can be problematic if like people's only go-to is like, oh, you can only speak some other language and not English, and you're like, pre-contact or pre-colonial. But I enjoy it. I find beauty and power in bringing these stories to life. I was happy that I had experience already playing characters similar to what Johiehon was going through, because I felt confident going into the role that like, I can do this, I can handle this. It would have been so overwhelming if it was like, oh, you've never done this before, like we're just gonna fly you to Scotland and teach you Mohawk and and like see if you can do it. It's challenging, and so confidence is necessary to go into. It's that whole scenario with, because you have like all of these people are depending on you to nail it. Otherwise, like there's so many people's jobs dependent on you doing a good job.
You're a horseback rider too, and a kung fu artist.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. Riding horses is super great. We went horseback riding. Carmen and I went in Scotland. I was asking because Richard rides, and he told me which stable to go to, and they call it going on a hack when you go out in the fields and on the trail riding.
I know that Richard rides. He has his little white horse Bianca that he pampers. I think he said she has an electric blanket or something like that has a heater in it. Oh,
I didn't get to meet her, but he said that's why he couldn't join us to go riding, because he's like, no, I can only ride with my horse.
oh, because he'd be cheating on her. Oh god, he's so funny. Yeah, well, she's a little white horse, and he does dressage on her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so he's the fancy pants.
Dressage? That sounds fun. I mean, my dream is like one day, like live in like near Santa Fe and have like a ranch, and and just like have a horse, and yeah. So we'll see. I'm still doing the Manhattan thing for now.
Yeah. And then Kung Fu, how does that fit in?
Again, see, this is all through acting. See, that's what I mean about like how it leads me to things, because writing was because I was auditioning for The Revenant back in the day, and I was like, do you know what? These roles are going to keep coming up. Like, I just have to learn. There's no more excuses, I'm going to learn. So that was great. That was my excuse to learn. And then I loved it, so I kept doing it. And then my excuse to learn Kung Fu was a project called Sky and Chang.
I saw that. It's like a little superhero.
Yeah, it was a pilot. So unfortunately it never got picked up. The co-lead in that is Olivia Chang, and she is one of the leads, or the lead, in this new Cinemax series that just aired called Warrior. And she also was in Marco Polo. I had learned for that role, and then I loved it, so I kept doing it.
The disappearance and murdering of Indigenous females is something that's very important to you. And that piece you co-wrote,
The Wolf of Wappanock Woods.
Yes, is about that. I watched that trailer. It looks creepy.
It's a creepy little short film, but it's about a really serious topic, and it's done pretty well. We shot it on like no budget, and it was also my first like producing experience, and co-writing experience, and it did pretty well. We did some like festivals with it, and then we got it was distributed on Comcast Xfinity, and I believe it's available on Amazon now. It's bringing awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, which is a big problem in Canada and the US, and other places too, Australia. Like, there's films about that issue finally are coming out, but that's been something that's been affecting our people, or people like Indigenous peoples, for a long time. Crossing Minnesota playwright Mary Catherine Nagel, she was just lobbying in DC last week, the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, and like, she's trying to raise awareness for because it's about all women, but like if it affects Native American women at a much higher rate. And so she's been out there lobbying, and she was saying, yes, we do have issues like on reserve, like indigenous to indigenous violence is a problem too. But the problem is that there is a legal loophole where a non-indigenous person can go onto a reservation and commit a violent act. The tribal police have no jurisdiction on that, over that non-native person.
What?
Yeah, and the non-native offender can actually, even then, if they wanted to like use violence to get away from the police officer, they wouldn't be able to do anything. They would have to get the FBI.
And so perpetrators have figured this out and exploit that.
Yeah, exactly.
That is messed up. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the whole history is messed up.
For sure. Yeah. It affects a lot of us and a lot of the stories that we're trying to tell in the community. And we want it to show it's not something that just only happened back in the day. It's happening now. It started back in the day and it has continued and it's morphed and it's changed, but it's not something that should continue.
Is language a bit of a passion for you?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's more like a nerd area. Passion, sure. I kind of wish I had more time and diligence to learn even more languages, like thoroughly. Uh, French is probably the most thorough that I know another language besides English, and that's because I took it in school when I was younger. Native dialects are very important because a lot of them are endangered. Nakota is endangered. In the US, it's really important because if the tribes don't have, I think it's like 2 fluent speakers left, then they'll lose their federal recognition. So it becomes a political move as well. I love language. It's important for me to learn it as correctly as possible when I'm doing a role. And again, like acting has kind of led me to languages, learning Mohawk for Outlander. All of the Nakota I've learned is because of acting roles or auditions. And that's been great for me because pursuing my career takes me away from where my people are situated, and it's really difficult to learn these languages if you're not immersed in them or surrounded by people that can help you with the nuances of them. So, with modern technology, I'm able to call an elder and get some coaching. Tom Shaw, he's my elder of choice. He's a Assiniboine. He always answers me and gets back to me and sends me translations in various forms, because a lot of these languages, not all of them, but a lot of them don't have a written language. And so they use English alphabet characters that closely resemble the sounds, but maybe aren't exact. So that's where the coaching comes in, because and then once you start to learn, usually an S is a sh sound and an E is an eh sound, then the stress is usually on the second syllable. It starts to fall into place more and more. So I'm very grateful for that as well. Some languages have their own alphabet, like Cree has its own set of letters, Navajo. And I don't know if Mohawk had its own letters, but now they have a specific way of spelling each word that uses characters that we're familiar with, but you wouldn't be able to read it if you didn't know how to pronounce things in Mohawk. Once you start to look at it, it starts to make more sense, because it's basically in 3-letter segments per sound.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like Braden Clark's character's name looks like Kaheraton, right? But it's Gahelodun. Siouan languages, that's mine, is in the Sioux umbrella. And other languages, especially of the people that moved around a lot, they're not written down. They're oral. Everything's oral history, oral communication. And when they couldn't understand each other, there is a Plains Sign Language, because there's a lot of nations around here and they all have different languages. So they all came together and decided, we'll figure out signs so that we all understand that at least. And we use some of that in our play. And I knew about that before already. And that would be a really interesting thing to catch before it's gone. I teach English to kids online. It's one of my side gigs that I do. And it is really fun and fulfilling. So I definitely think language is a big part of my life and journey, and I think it will continue to be, and hopefully even in a bigger way.
You are actually doing a lot right now, and you're a worker based on I mean, looking at your IMDb, just it's like you got a ton of stuff coming out this year.
So
Anything coming up for you that you want to mention?
I guess I can officially say that I'm going to be doing a sci-fi film in Canada called The First Encounter, and it's basically like has to do with First Nations people and aliens. That's pretty much all I can say. I'm excited about that, and I have to do a call with the director this evening. So.
Well, listen, thank you so much for spending time with me today and on your day off. I just can't say enough about your performance in episode 412 Providence. It was stunning.
Thank you so much. It's really has been a very special experience to be a part of, and to be able to watch back, and then to have the fan response, and then I'm going to get to go to the Outlandish Vancouver conference, and people are coming to my show. So I really feel like it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I couldn't have been happier and more grateful to be brought on board.